Hello everybody on YouTube, this is Curry here. Today I'm going to be doing something a little different. I did promise some reviews, so today I'm going to be doing a review on Dead Rising. The original, in fact. I had never played it. I recently, kind of recently, picked up Dead Rising 3, loved it, was very interested in figuring out the story behind Chuck Green because he makes an appearance in there, and then I figured what the heck, the original's really cheap, so I decided I'd get it. Not a big fan of open world games, but I'll tell you, I actually really liked this. I liked Dead Rising 3 a lot, and then I played Dead Rising, and I liked it even more. To begin with, the game was actually very good looking. Consider it is a launch window game, so it was a very early Xbox 360 game. It's not exactly the newest of games, so it's going to look pretty ugly by today's standards, even by today's Xbox 360 standards. But as it stands, it is still a pretty good looking game for its time. One of my biggest complaints, though, when it really boils down to it, as far as design structure goes, is the controls. The controls are really, really clunky. Like, at first I attributed it to being a launch game for Xbox 360. Okay, that's fine, it's not going to be perfect. But then I realized we had analog sticks on the Xbox original, the PS2, and the GameCube. So there's no excuse for this. There's no level of movement. There's no run, there's no walk, like there's no degrees of movement. It's just you press the control stick, no matter what, you're moving. Okay, whatever, that's fine, I guess we can deal with that to an extent, but then it gets into a problem with aiming. It's a game that's very heavy on shooting, while using melee weapons is great. Oftentimes you are going to have to use a gun. And when you do need to use a gun, count yourself out. It's like playing a PS1 game, really. There's like no real sensitivity. It's going in jumps, and it's very jerky. Like, no matter, I experimented by pressing the stick at different intervals to see if it'll move at different speeds. No, it moves at the same speed the whole time. So that was one of my biggest issues. It was a little difficult to control, and being an Xbox 360 game, for a next generation system at the time, it was 2 generations old, as far as controls go. And don't give me the crap about it being, oh, okay, well, you know, that's just Capcom's not used to making it. Yeah, what about Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube? That game controlled beautifully. I didn't have any problem with sensitivity. I didn't have any problem with aiming. So that was a big flaw, I felt like, that was in the game. But that being said, moving forward past that, most everything else about the game was actually very, very good. Very well done. One of the most interesting things I always spot out are the story and the thematic elements within a game. A lot of them are silly, a lot of them are nonsensical, a lot of them are dramatic, overly dramatic. This one was very interesting because it's very silly, very over the top, but at the same time it has a very big underlying political message in it. It's very obvious that the message in it is intended towards some negativity towards some of the American principles being made by a Japanese company and a Japanese team, which is okay. I'm actually okay with that. Being an American myself, I can accept that because he's actually, Inafune and his team were actually, I believe this was Inafune, correct me if I'm wrong, and his team did a really good job of expressing specific themes. I'm not going to specify because part of it is actually spoiler for what the game is about if I express them, but specific things that America does that aren't exactly good, and kind of playing on that and then blowing it out of proportion in order to make a point. So it was really good that they did that in a silly environment so that it's not something that's blown right in your face. You know, if you're looking for it, you'll see it. If you're not looking for it, you won't give a crap. It's a fun game and you're going to enjoy it. One other thing I noticed was the boss battles were actually interesting. They were pretty varied. Once again, I avoid trying to say spoilers, so I'm not going to really talk about any boss specifics, but they were pretty varied, they were pretty fun. Aside from the control issue, they actually were pretty well done. I actually enjoyed the boss battles a lot. It's something I've always valued out of the Capcom Studios games, is that they know how to do bosses when it comes to games. I mean, look at Mega Man, look at Resident Evil, look at Dead Rising, for example. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but I know there's plenty of other Capcom games, and they do bosses really well. One of the most interesting things also is that it has a time limit. Now, people will be turned off by this. You know, a lot of people hated Majora's Mask because it had a time limit. But there was a very specific reason for it, and it really catered really well to the gameplay. It's a sense of urgency, you know. There's a zombie outbreak. If you don't escape by a certain time, your ride's going to be gone, and you're screwed. You know, it's as simple as that. Being Frank West, you're a reporter, you want to get your story, get it done, get everything figured out, and then boom. You got to get out of there when your ride comes back. That's the gist of what you need to do. Now, so the time limit makes sense. The game is relatively short as a result. I don't remember how long I spent on it, but I beat it in about 2 nights. It wasn't too long. But there's a lot of replayability. There's a lot of missions you can do, side missions, and I can almost guarantee you on your first playthrough you're probably not going to be able to do all of them because you won't know how to navigate them all. You won't know where's what's going on, so you're just going to be in trouble. So my first playthrough I actually pretty much flew through just the main missions. But there are a lot of side missions. There's a lot of neat unlockables, which is really cool. A lot of neat weapons you can use. It was really fun to play. It was just very straightforward fun. And one of the other things I thought was interesting was, even though it's a silly environment, they did really help cater to the sense of survival of a zombie outbreak, which is really neat. Excuse that noise, that's my phone. Let me put that on silent so we don't get that happening again. So it was very neat because a game silly like this, and open world games in general, I feel like there's always an overabundance of resources, and that's an issue. Exceptions being things like Elder Scrolls. But usually I always have too much, and that's part of the thing that gets me away from wanting to play them. This one was really cool because I had a lot of situations where I was low on resources. I had to be careful. My weapons were breaking. My stuff was breaking down. I didn't have inventory space because it's realistic. I can't carry 50,000 things in my pocket. It was really interesting. I had to get film. When I wanted to take pictures for my reports or for my achievements, I needed to get film. I needed to go to a camera store in the mall. I needed to track it down. A lot of little things like this really made a sense of realism in a world that wasn't serious, but was serious at the same time. It was a really interesting mix and really well done. If I'm not mistaken, there was also a crafting system, which I'm not completely familiar with. I didn't even bother touching anything like that. I just picked up what I had and used what I could find, so I didn't really bother. But I remember some hints at it in the game. Like I said, I didn't really mess with it, so that's not even something I'm going to even talk about. But it's an extra feature, and if it was there, then cool. If it wasn't, I never knew any different because I never bothered with it. So yeah, I felt like Dead Rising was a very well done game. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't terrible, it did have its flaws. The controls were a big issue. And that's the biggest thing that held the game back for me. Everything else about it was pretty well done. It was good length, good replayability, good fun, good themes. Frank West was a cool character. He wasn't the typical, hey, I'm a hero, you know, look at me. He was kind of like an anti-hero. I don't know what the word is you'd use for it. But he was the kind of guy where he felt down to earth, he felt real. He's a journalist, he wants to get a story, that's what matters the most. And that's his character. You know, he might do some good things, he might do some bad things, but he's a human. Humans will do what they gotta do in a zombie outbreak. That was one of the best parts. So, that being said, I was really happy with it. Very satisfying game. And I highly recommend it to anybody who has access to an Xbox 360. If you haven't played the first Dead Rising, please pick it up. You're really missing out on something really special. And with that, this is Curry signing out. I hope you enjoyed my first review. Thanks.